The autumn sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Sweetwater Springs, Wyoming, as Willow Reed clutched her 5-year-old brother's hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The auctioneer's voice boomed over the crowd, announcing the next lot for sale: a young woman of 20 and her baby brother, sold as a package deal. Willow's heart hammered against her ribs as she fought back tears, determined not to show weakness to the leering faces before her. $200 for the girl and the boy, the auctioneer shouted. Strong back, good teeth, can cook and clean. Boys young enough to train up right. Willow stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with any of the potential buyers. Just 3 weeks ago, she and little Jaime had been living peacefully with their father on their small homestead. Then the fever took him, along with their modest savings spent on medicines that didn't work. When the bank foreclosed on their property, the debt collector had seen an opportunity in the orphaned siblings. $250, do I hear 300? The auctioneer's voice grated against her ears. 300, a voice called from the back. 350. Another man shouted, his eyes roving over Willow's body in a way that made her skin crawl. $500, came a firm voice from the side of the gathering. The crowd parted as a tall man stepped forward. His face was partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but Willow could see a strong jawline dusted with stubble. His clothes were worn but clean denims, a simple cotton shirt and a leather vest. Not a wealthy man, but respectable. 500 going once, twice. Sold to Mr. Archer Kincaid. Willow released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. At least it wasn't the man with the wandering eyes. Jaime pressed closer to her side, his small fingers digging into her skirt. "Come along," Mr. Kincaid said, approaching them. His voice was deep but not unkind. He nodded toward a wagon at the edge of town. "We've got a ways to go before nightfall." As they walked, Jaime stumbled, exhausted from standing in the hot sun for hours. Without hesitation, Mr. Kincaid scooped the boy up, settling him on his broad shoulders. The gesture surprised Willow, who had expected to be treated like property, not with consideration. "Where are we going?" she ventured to ask as they reached the wagon. "My ranch, about 3 hours west of here." He helped Jaime into the wagon bed where a small pile of blankets had been arranged. "You two rest back here. Got water in that canteen if you're thirsty." Willow climbed in beside her brother, eyeing their new owner warily. "What will be expected of us?" Archer Kincaid paused, his hand on the side of the wagon. His eyes, a striking shade of green, met hers directly. "For now, just rest. We'll talk more when we get home." The wagon lurched forward, and Willow wrapped a protective arm around Jaime, who had already begun to drift off, his small body exhausted. Despite her determination to remain alert, the rhythmic swaying of the wagon and the warmth of the late afternoon sun soon had her eyelids drooping as well. She awoke with a start when the wagon came to a stop. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Before them stood a modest but well-maintained ranch house with a large barn and corral nearby. Several horses grazed in a fenced pasture, and smoke curled from the chimney. "We're here," Archer said, coming around to help them down. Jaime was still asleep, and the rancher lifted him gently. "I'll show you where you can put him down." Inside, the house was simple but comfortable: a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove, and doors leading to what Willow assumed were bedrooms. The furniture was sturdy and practical, crafted by skilled hands. Archer led her to a small room with a single bed. "He can sleep here for now," he said, laying Jaime down carefully. Willow pulled off the child's worn boots and covered him with a quilt that lay folded at the foot of the bed. When she returned to the main room, Archer was stirring something in a pot over the stove. The smell of beef stew made her stomach growl loudly enough for him to hear. A hint of amusement crossed his face. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the table. "You must be hungry." Willow sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap. "Mr. Kincaid, Archer," he corrected, placing a bowl of stew and a chunk of bread before her. "Archer," she repeated hesitantly. "I need to understand what you expect from us, from me." He sat across from her with his own bowl. "Eat first. Then we'll talk." The stew was hearty and flavorful, the first proper meal she'd had in days. Despite her anxiety, Willow found herself emptying the bowl quickly. Archer silently refilled it without comment. When she had finished the second helping, he poured them both cups of coffee and leaned back in his chair. "I need help around the ranch," he began. "The previous housekeeper left to marry a man from Cheyenne. I've been managing, but poorly." He took a sip from his cup. "I saw them bringing you two to the auction block this morning. The way you stood proud, protective of your brother, I respected that." Willow waited, uncertain where this was leading. "I'm offering you a position, not ownership," he continued. "You'll keep house, cook meals, tend the kitchen garden. In exchange, you and your brother will have a roof over your heads, food, and a small wage." Willow's eyes widened. "A wage, but you bought us." "I bought your contract to prevent someone else from buying it," he said firmly. "You're not slaves. That's not how things work in my home. And my brother, he's too young for hard work. Let him be a child. When he's older, if he shows interest in ranch work, I'll teach him. If not, he'll get schooling." Willow studied him, searching for deception. "Why would you do this?" Archer's eyes softened slightly. "I know what it's like to be without family, without choices." He stood, taking his empty bowl to the washing basin. "There's a bedroom for you through that door. It has a lock. Use it if it makes you feel safer." He turned back to her, his expression solemn. "You've both been through enough. You're safe here. You're both my family now if you choose to be." The unexpected kindness in his words brought tears to Willow's eyes for the first time that day. She quickly blinked them away. "Thank you," she managed to say. That night, Willow lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the strange sounds of the ranch, the occasional nickering of horses, the distant howl of a coyote, the creak of the house settling. Despite Archer's assurances, she had locked the door. Trust would take time to build. The next morning, she woke to find Jaime already up and sitting at the kitchen table while Archer showed him how to whittle a small piece of wood. "Like this," the rancher was saying, guiding the boy's small hands with gentle patience. "Always cut away from yourself." Jaime's face was screwed up in concentration, his tongue poking out from the corner of his mouth. He looked more relaxed than she had seen him in weeks. "Good morning," Archer said, noticing her. "Coffee's hot." Over the next few days, Willow settled into a routine. She rose early to prepare breakfast, then spent the mornings cleaning and organizing the house, which had clearly been maintained by a bachelor for too long. The afternoons were devoted to laundry, gardening, and preparing the evening meal. Jaime followed Archer like a shadow, fascinated by everything the rancher did. A week into their stay, Willow was hanging laundry on the line when she heard Jaime's delighted laugh, a sound she hadn't heard since before their father fell ill. She peered around the sheet she was hanging to see Archer lifting the boy onto the back of a gentle old mare. "Hold the reins like this," Archer was instructing. "Not too tight, she needs to feel your hands, but you don't want to hurt her mouth." Jaime nodded seriously, his small face alight with joy. Archer walked beside the horse, one hand ready to catch the child if necessary, as they made a slow circuit of the corral. Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in Willow's chest at the sight. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps they had found not just shelter but a home. That evening, as Willow was finishing the dishes, Archer approached her with a small pouch. Your first week's wages, he said, placing it on the counter beside her. She dried her hands and opened the pouch, surprised by the amount inside. This is too much. It's fair payment for good work, he replied. There's something else we need to discuss. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. The town's a day's ride from here. I usually go once a month for supplies. I'll be going tomorrow. You and Jaime should come along, be seen as free people, not property. You think that's necessary? People talk. I want no misunderstandings about your position here. His jaw tightened slightly. And you should know you have options. If you decide this arrangement isn't working, you can leave. I won't stop you. The realization that he was giving her a genuine choice moved her deeply. Thank you for that, but so far, I have no complaints about our arrangement. The trip to town the next day proved more challenging than Willow had anticipated. Sweetwater Springs was small but growing, with a general store, a saloon, a small church, and various other establishments lining its main street. As they made their way through town, Willow was acutely aware of curious stares and whispered comments. At the general store, the proprietor, a balding man with spectacles perched on his nose, raised his eyebrows at the sight of them. Archer Kincaid, bringing company to town. Never thought I'd see the day. His gaze shifted to Willow and Jaime. These the ones from the auction block last week. Archer's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. This is Miss Willow Reed and her brother Jaime. They're working at my ranch. The storekeeper's eyes narrowed slightly. Working, eh? That what they're calling it these days? Before Archer could respond, a woman's voice cut through the tension. Walter Green, you mind your own business for once in your miserable life. A handsome woman in her 40s approached, her dark hair streaked with silver and pulled back in a practical bun. She extended a hand to Willow. Augusta Blackwell. I run the dressmaker's shop next door. Willow shook her hand, grateful for the intervention. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Blackwell. It's Miss, actually, Augusta replied with a wink. Never found a man worth giving up my independence for. She turned to Archer. Your usual order ready for pickup, Archer, and I've added some fabric I thought Miss Reed might find useful for the boys' clothing. Growing children always need new things. Add it to my bill, Archer said with a nod of thanks. As Augusta helped gather their supplies, she spoke quietly to Willow. Don't mind Walter. He's a gossip with nothing better to do than make assumptions. Archer Kincaid is a good man, best in the territory if you ask me. Lost his parents young, built that ranch up from nothing. He's been very kind to us, Willow admitted. Augusta smiled knowingly. That doesn't surprise me one bit. Now, you come see me if you need anything a woman can't easily ask for in mixed company, you hear. The remainder of their visit passed without incident, though Willow remained conscious of the speculative glances cast their way. On the ride home, Jaime chatted excitedly about the candy Archer had bought him, while Willow sat quietly, processing the day's events. People will talk for a while, Archer said eventually, seemingly reading her thoughts. Then they'll find something new to gossip about. I'm used to people talking, she replied. After our mother died, there were always whispers about my father raising 2 children alone. People fear what's different from their own experience. He glanced at her. Augusta likes you, that's good. She's respected in town. She seemed to think highly of you. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She's known me since I was younger than Jaime, taught me to sew a straight seam when I was mending my own clothes after my parents died. How old were you? Willow asked, curious about his past. 12 when my father died. Mother had passed 2 years earlier. His hands tightened on the reins. Had to grow up fast. I understand that, she said softly. Their eyes met briefly, a moment of silent understanding passing between them. As summer gave way to autumn, Life at the ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. Willow's cooking improved with practice, and she took pride in keeping the house clean and organized. Jaime grew stronger and more confident, spending his days helping with small chores and learning to ride. And Archer, though still reserved, gradually revealed more of himself through small gestures and quiet conversations. One evening, as the first chill of autumn crept into the air, Willow sat on the porch, mending one of Jaime's shirts. Archer joined her, his own day's work complete, and they sat in companionable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. "He's sleeping well now," Willow observed, nodding toward the house where Jaime had been put to bed an hour earlier. "No more nightmares." "That's good," Archer replied. "He's a resilient boy. Children adapt more easily than adults, I think." She set aside her sewing. "I wanted to thank you, Archer. What you've done for us, I can never repay that." He shook his head. "There's nothing to repay." "There is," she insisted gently. "You gave us safety when we had none. You've been patient and kind, especially with Jaime." She hesitated. "You've given us a home." Archer was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "This place was just a house before you came. You and Jaime, you've made it a home again." Their eyes met in the gathering darkness, and Willow felt something shift between them, something tender and fragile and full of possibility. The moment was broken by the distant sound of approaching riders. Archer stood immediately, his posture alert. "Stay here," he said, his voice suddenly hard. He disappeared into the house, returning moments later with a rifle. "Get inside and lock the door. Don't open it unless you hear my voice." Fear gripped Willow's heart as she hurried into the house. Through the window, she watched as 3 riders emerged from the darkness, stopping a short distance from where Archer stood waiting, rifle held casually but ready. She couldn't hear the conversation, but the tension in Archer's shoulders told her all she needed to know. After what seemed like an eternity, the riders turned and left, though not before one of them spat on the ground in apparent disgust. When Archer returned to the house, his face was grim. "What was that about?" Willow asked, her heart still racing. "Wade Sutton and his brothers," Archer replied, setting the rifle aside. "They've had their eye on this land for years, thought they might be able to intimidate me into selling." "Is that all?" she pressed, sensing there was more. Archer's jaw tightened. "They heard about you and Jaime. Made some suggestions I didn't appreciate." Willow's stomach twisted. "About me? It doesn't matter. They won't be back any time soon." His eyes met hers, fierce with a protective intensity that made her breath catch. "No one's going to hurt you or Jaime while I'm alive, I promise you that." The sincerity in his voice warmed her even as it frightened her. "I don't want you risking yourself for us." "That's not your decision to make," he said simply. That night, Willow's sleep was troubled by dreams of the auction block and faceless men bidding for her and Jaime. She woke before dawn, her heart pounding, and slipped quietly from her room to check on her brother. Jaime slept peacefully, one arm flung above his head, his mouth slightly open. Reassured, she closed his door softly and made her way to the kitchen to start breakfast, only to find Archer already there, coffee brewing on the stove. "You're up early," she said, surprised. "Couldn't sleep." He poured her a cup of coffee and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed, sending a jolt of awareness through her. "Bad dreams," she nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "About the auction, about what might have happened if you hadn't been there." Archer leaned against the counter, his own cup cradled in his large hands. "I almost hadn't planned to go to town that day." "What changed your mind?" "Ran out of coffee," he said with a small smile. "Of all things." Willow laughed softly at the irony. "Then I'm very grateful for your coffee habit." "As am I." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary before he looked away. "I'll be breaking the new mare today. Might be late for supper. The moment passed, but Willow found herself thinking of it throughout the day, the warmth in his eyes, the way his fingers had felt against hers, the quiet intimacy of sharing coffee before dawn. As autumn deepened, bringing with it brisk mornings and golden afternoons, Willow became increasingly aware of Archer in ways that went beyond gratitude. She noticed the strength in his hands as he worked with the horses, the rare smile that transformed his serious face, the gentleness he showed Jaime during their riding lessons. And sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she caught him watching her with an expression that made her heart beat faster. One crisp October morning, Willow was in the kitchen kneading bread dough when Jaime burst through the door, his face alight with excitement. "Willow, Archer's taking me hunting tomorrow, just the two of us, camping overnight and everything." She raised her eyebrows, looking past Jaime to where Archer stood in the doorway, an apologetic expression on his face. "I should have discussed it with you first," he acknowledged. "Yes, you should have," she agreed, though she couldn't maintain her stern expression in the face of Jaime's enthusiasm. "Please say I can go," Jaime begged. "Archer says I'm old enough now, and he'll teach me to shoot his small rifle, and we'll bring back a deer for winter meat. And slow down," Willow laughed, ruffling his hair with a flour-covered hand. "I need to talk to Archer alone about this. Why don't you go feed the chickens for me?" Once Jaime had dashed out, still bubbling with excitement, she turned to Archer. "Hunting, he's only 5. Almost 6, Archer corrected. "And I started younger. It's important for a boy to learn these skills. It's dangerous. I'll keep him safe, Willow, you know that." She sighed, knowing he was right. "He's never been away from me overnight." Archer stepped closer, his expression softening. "It's good for him to gain some independence, and good for you to have some time to yourself." "I don't know what to do with time to myself anymore," she admitted with a small laugh. "I've been responsible for him since he was born." "Then it's definitely time." He hesitated, then reached out to brush a streak of flour from her cheek. The touch was brief but left her skin tingling. "We'll be back before sundown tomorrow. I promise." The next morning, Willow watched as Archer and Jaime rode out, her brother perched in front of Archer on his stallion, waving excitedly. The house felt strangely empty without them, the silence both peaceful and disconcerting. She spent the day catching up on mending and baking bread and pies, enjoying the rare solitude even as she found herself glancing frequently out the window. That evening, she soaked in a long bath, a luxury she seldom allowed herself, and went to bed early with a book Archer had lent her. She woke to the sound of rain pattering against the window. By mid-morning, it had developed into a steady downpour, and by afternoon, Willow was pacing anxiously, watching the muddy yard for signs of their return. When dusk approached with no sign of Archer and Jaime, real fear began to set in. She was considering saddling a horse herself to go look for them when she finally heard hoofbeats approaching. She rushed to the door to see Archer's stallion trotting into the yard, both riders soaked to the skin. Jaime was wrapped in Archer's coat, only his beaming face visible. "We got a deer, Willow," he called as Archer lifted him down. "I helped." "Inside, both of you, before you catch your death," she ordered, relief making her voice sharper than intended. Once Jaime had been dried off, fed hot stew, and put to bed still chattering excitedly about their adventure, Willow returned to the main room where Archer sat by the fire, his hair still damp from changing into dry clothes. "You were worried," he observed as she handed him a cup of coffee. "It started raining, and you weren't back when you said you'd be." She sat across from him, her own coffee untouched. "I imagined all sorts of terrible things. We waited out the worst of the rain under some pine trees. I wouldn't have risked bringing him home through a downpour if we'd had any choice." He looked at her over the rim of his cup. "He did well, Willow. You should be proud." "I am," she said softly. "Of both of you, I've never seen him so happy." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for being so good to him. He never really knew our father. He was too young when he got sick, and now he looks at you like—" "Like what?" Archer asked when she trailed off. "Like you hang the moon and stars," she finished with a small smile. "You've become very important to him. He's important to me too." Archer set his cup aside and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Both of you are." The intensity in his green eyes made her breath catch. "Archer, I know this isn't simple," he continued. "How we came together, what people might think, but these past months—" He ran a hand through his damp hair, searching for words. "I never expected to feel this way again, or maybe at all." Willow's heart hammered against her ribs. "Feel what way?" Instead of answering, he rose and crossed to where she sat, kneeling before her chair. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he took her hands in his. "I love you, Willow Reed," he said simply. "I think I started falling in love with you that first day, when you stood so brave and proud on that auction block, protecting your brother." Tears welled in her eyes as emotions she had been holding back for months finally broke free. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself." "Why afraid?" "Because I came here as someone you bought," she explained, her voice trembling. "I didn't want my feelings to be about gratitude or obligation." Archer's thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. "And now I know it's more than that, much more." She freed one hand to touch his face, marveling at the liberty to do so. "You're a good man, Archer Kincaid, the best man I've ever known." He turned his face to press a kiss into her palm, and the simple gesture sent warmth flooding through her. When he looked back at her, his eyes held a question. She answered by leaning forward and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as years of loneliness and months of growing feelings flowed between them. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer until she slid from the chair onto her knees before him, their bodies pressed together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Archer rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Willow," he murmured. "Be my wife, not my housekeeper. Let's make this family official." Joy bubbled up within her, bright and dazzling as sunrise. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were wed 2 weeks later in the small church in Sweetwater Springs, with Augusta Blackwell standing as Willow's witness and Jaime proudly bearing the rings. The townspeople's curiosity about their unusual beginning gradually gave way to acceptance as they observed the genuine love between them. The following spring brought new life to the ranch, calves in the pasture, chicks in the henhouse, and seeds sprouting in Willow's expanded garden. And as the wildflowers began to bloom across the prairie, Willow shared her own news with Archer one evening as they sat on the porch, watching Jaime chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "There will be another addition to our family come winter," she said, taking his hand and placing it over her still flat stomach. "A brother or sister for Jaime." Archer's face transformed with wonder and joy. He pulled her into his arms, his kiss filled with promise and love. "I never thought I'd have all this," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "A wife, children, a true family." "Nor did I," she replied, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "When they put us on that auction block, I thought all was lost. And now—" She looked up at him, her heart full to bursting. "Now I know it was just the beginning." In December, as snow blanketed the Wyoming landscape, their son was born, Andrew James Kincaid, with his father's green eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Jaime, now 6 and fiercely proud of his role as big brother, rarely left the baby's side, regaling him with stories of hunting trips and horse-riding adventures to come. As Willow watched her husband holding their newborn son, with Jaime pressed against his side, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the depths of despair on that auction block to the heights of joy in their home, it had been a path neither of them could have foreseen. "What are you thinking?" Archer asked, looking up to find her watching them. "I'm thinking about family," she replied, crossing the room to join them. "About how it can be lost and found and created anew." He shifted the baby to one arm so he could pull her close with the other. "You and Jaime saved me as much as I saved you," he said quietly. "Never forget that." Outside, snow continued to fall, wrapping their ranch in a blanket of white. But inside, warmth and love abounded, the most precious gifts of all in the wild Wyoming territory, where a broken young woman and her brother had found not just shelter, but a home, a future, and a love that would sustain them through all the seasons to come.